The air outside Tesla headquarters in Austin, Texas, was thick with tension. The crowd wasn't just angry anymore. It was volatile. Some wore masks, faces obscured. Others clutched objects that weren't meant for peaceful protest. Bricks, bottles, anything that could be thrown. Inside Tesla HQ, Elon Musk sat at the head of a meeting table, reviewing updates on the company's latest AI advancements. His phone vibrated. A security alert flashed across the screen. Crowd gathering outside. Escalation likely. Recommendation: exit through secondary route. Elon exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. He had dealt with protesters before. Union disputes, environmental activists, political extremists. He'd seen it all. But this was different. This wasn't just a protest. It was a siege. Outside, the mob surged forward, slamming against the main gates. Security personnel, already on high alert, moved to reinforce the perimeter. Cameras captured the moment live. Social media lit up with real-time updates, fueling the hysteria. Then the first object flew. A brick sailed over the security barrier, crashing against the pavement just feet away from the front entrance. It was the first shot fired, the beginning of something that couldn't be undone. Inside, Tesla's security chief, Mason Grant, stormed into the room. "Elon," he said, voice tight, "we need to move. Now." Elon leaned back in his chair, watching the chaos unfold on the security monitors. "How bad?" Mason hesitated. "They're not here to protest. They're here for you." Elon tapped his fingers on the desk. He wasn't the type to run, but he wasn't foolish either. He glanced at the screen again. Masked figures pushing through the barriers. The distant sound of sirens growing louder. "All right," Elon said, standing. "Let's go." Mason led the way, guiding Elon through a back corridor toward the underground parking structure. Tesla's private security had already positioned vehicles for a quick escape. But outside, the mob wasn't waiting for an invitation. They had breached the front gates. A masked man in black shoved past the barricade, followed by dozens more. Their voices turned into a roar, a sound that drowned out reason, a sound that turned chaos into fury. The first security officer to stand in their way took a blow to the head. A second was tackled, disappearing under a sea of bodies. The Tesla employees watching from the windows stood frozen, horrified. It wasn't just about protesting Tesla anymore. This was about Elon Musk, and they weren't leaving without him. The underground parking lot was dimly lit, its silence shattered by the distant roar of the mob outside Tesla headquarters. Elon Musk walked briskly alongside Mason Grant, Tesla's head of security, toward a waiting Cybertruck. The armored vehicle's doors slid open as two armed guards flanked either side. "Elon," Mason said sharply, "we don't have time. We're taking the south exit," and a thunderous boom cut him off. One of the security doors upstairs had been breached. "They're inside." The words were barely a whisper, but the weight of them crashed like a sledgehammer. The monitors in the garage flickered. Masked figures poured into Tesla HQ, glass shattered. Alarms blared. The mob had pushed past the barricades, overrun the first line of defense, and were now inside the building. They weren't just angry. They were hunting Elon Musk. Elon had never been one to back down. His entire life had been about pushing limits, challenging the impossible. But this wasn't a debate, and no amount of logic or innovation could reason with a mob. Mason placed a firm hand on Elon's shoulder. "We have one shot at this. We take the truck. We move now." Elon hesitated, not because he doubted Mason's judgment, but because he knew what the cameras outside were capturing. The second he left, the narrative would be rewritten. Elon Musk flees his own headquarters. That headline would dominate the news cycle before he even reached the highway. But there was no time to care about optics, not when a violent mob was storming his company. "All right," Elon said. "Let's move." They barely made it into the Cybertruck before the garage doors burst open. A wave of masked figures stormed in. Mason barely had time to slam his fist against the lock controls before a lead pipe came crashing against the truck's armored windows. The sound was deafening, a brutal reminder that these people weren't here to talk. The Cybertruck lurched forward, its tires screeching as it shot toward the underground exit. Mason drove, jaw clenched, weaving around pillars as protesters pounded against the windows, screaming. Elon sat in the front passenger seat, his gaze locked forward. He'd seen everything in his lifetime, the highest praise, the deepest hatred, but never like this. Never so raw, never so dangerous. The south exit came into view, but so did the blockade. Protesters had formed a human chain, locking arms, refusing to move. Behind them, more figures loomed, some armed with makeshift weapons, others holding their phones up, ready to broadcast Elon Musk's next move to millions. Mason's knuckles whitened around the wheel. "They're trying to trap us," Elon exhaled. "Then let's see what the Cybertruck can do." Mason pressed the pedal to the floor. The electric beast roared forward. The human chain scattered in panic. Protesters dove out of the way at the last second, the truck plowing through the chaos like a force of nature. A bottle smashed against the windshield. Someone hurled a rock, but the reinforced glass didn't even crack. The mob roared behind them, but the Cybertruck didn't stop. With a final jarring lurch, it broke free. By the time they hit the highway, sirens filled the air. Police units stormed Tesla HQ, moving in to contain the damage. Helicopters circled above. News stations were already spinning their own version of events. Inside the truck, Elon sat in silence. Mason finally spoke. "You all right?" Elon didn't answer at first. His gaze stayed fixed on the city lights ahead. Then finally he spoke. "I saw their faces," he said. His voice was calm. "They weren't just angry. They were lost." Mason frowned. "They nearly killed you." "I know." Elon's fingers drummed against his knee. "That's the problem. The media was going to frame this as another billionaire escaping the consequences of his actions. They wouldn't care about the violence, the destruction, the way reason had been abandoned. None of it mattered. They had their story, and Elon had his. "We'll fix this," he finally said, more to himself than to Mason. "Not by running, not by fighting." Mason shook his head. "Then how?" Elon looked out at the city. "By building something better." The Cybertruck roared into the night, leaving the chaos behind.